Today I want to talk to you about Shakespearean verse. All the other information is in the written lecture, but I have to speak to you about this. Two syllables. Ba-bum. Soft hard. Soft hard. That is what the poets call an iamb. I-am-B. You do 5 of these. And you have 5 iambs to a meter. A meter of verse is a line of verse. If you've ever seen a Shakespeare play written in a book or anything, it's a verse. It looks it's free verse. It's open poetry. Unless he wants to rhyme, he plays with it. Don't worry about that right now. Right now, I want to talk about the rhythm. All right. So you have that iamb. Now you use the Greek prefix for 5, penta. Penta. Okay. Think of a pentagram, or think of the military building down in Washington called the Pentagon. 5-sided, right? So 5 iambs, iamb, pentameter, right? The adjective form of iamb is iambic. The B is silent in iamb, but you do pronounce it when it's adjective. So iamb becomes iambic. And then pentameter. Now we don't say odometer in odometer, or we don't say thermometer when we talk about a thermometer. We say thermometer. So it's the same. We don't say pentameter, we say pentameter. Pentameter. Okay? Iambic pentameter. That is what is a verse line. It was not invented by these people. Iambic pentameter was part of poetry for centuries. But to make it a dramatic line, Christopher Marlowe actually improved it and made it accessible as a line of drama. For instance, in his play of Faust, Dr. Faustus, which actually is entitled The Tragical History of Dr. Faustus, Dr. Faustus is with Mephistopheles, who is the devil. And the thing about Faust is that he sells his soul to the devil because he wants to know everything, which is a very Renaissance, neoclassic thing. The knowledge, the search for knowledge, right? Even the dark arts, even the dark side of knowledge. He wants to know about it all. So at a point, he says to Mephistopheles, he would like to see the most beautiful woman in the world. And there's a vision shows up on stage somewhere, whatever, and it's Helen of Troy. Remember Helen of Troy? Her abduction by Paris, Prince of Troy. It's what started the Trojan War. Her husband, Helen of Troy, was really not of Troy. She was of Sparta. She was Greek, but she was married to the king of Sparta, Menelaus, who was the brother of Agamemnon, who was king of Athens or Thebes at the time. And they went to go get Helen back from Troy, and that started the Trojan War. Anyway, she was supposed to be the most beautiful woman in the world, and in Marlowe's play, Mephistopheles shows Faust an image. She doesn't have any lines, by the way. She's a walk-on, you might say. Anyway, so here is Faust standing there looking at this beautiful, beautiful woman. And in relation to the Trojan War and the invasion of Troy, he has this line to say. Is this the face that launched 1,000 ships and burnt the topmost towers of Illyrium? I'm not sure of the second line, but the first line I know is probably the most famous line in all of Marlowe. And is this the face that launched the 1,000 ships? Meaning her face, the Greek army, navy went, right? The ships. So, how do you break that down, right? Into iambics. I have a sheet here, but of course it's backwards for you, so I can't show it. I think I'll be sending it to you. It might be in one of the attachments. We'll find that out later. Anyway, okay. Is this the face that launched 1,000 ships? Thousands is split. Thousands, hundred, right? 1,000. It works very well in English because of the way English is constructed, the way we speak. We emphasize certain words and more than one syllable words. We sometimes put it doesn't matter. It depends upon the word where we put the syllable. The stress, Usually when you write these things out, if you take a line of poetry and want to break it up, you find the beats first. They're called beats. And so you put a little sort of like U shape over the first syllable and a stroke over the second syllable, the hard one, or the stressed one. Right? It's an accent line. In other languages we use accents all the time, but we don't do them in English. So if we stretch it out, so is this the face that launched 1,000 ships? Now, of course, you don't speak it like that when you're standing on a stage. You don't speak it like that at all. But if you want to find where to stress the words, the poet, whether it's Marlowe or Kidd or Beaumont and Fletcher or Webster or Shakespeare himself, he's already stressed it for you. You know where to place your stressing when you're saying the line. I'm just talking plain mechanics here. I'm not getting into any psychological whatever right now. All right? Just the mechanics of what the written page, what the words, how you read them. So, you have, is this the face that launched 1,000 ships? And you could say it, is this the face that launched 1,000 ships? Or is this the face that launched 1,000 ships? That depends upon you and your take on the line. So that's called iambic pentameter. It wasn't invented by Marlowe, but it was improved by Marlowe and perfected by Marlowe. And of course, Marlowe, his plays were already being performed when William Shakespeare started to write. So let's cross over to Shakespeare. I'm going to see if I can just say the words without stressing them. Okay, so let's say, but soft what light through yonder window breaks. But soft what light through yonder window breaks. He wants to stress stuff. So again, you break it down. But soft what light through yonder window breaks. 5. Now here, you see, with the Marlowe line, it ends, that's a question. Is this the face that launched 1,000 ships? Full stop. Question mark, right? The way I spoke it. The second line too, that's why I didn't want to do the second line. We'll do the second line here. But soft, what light through yonder window breaks, it is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Juliet, you don't really say Juliet here. In order to scan the line, as they say, the word scan, in order to fit it, you use in English what is called in the language a diphthong. It's yet, Juliet, Juliet, not Juliet. Okay, so it's but soft. What light through yonder window breaks, it is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who is already sick and pale with grief, that thou, her handmaiden, is far more fair than she. again, I'm going to do the whole thing for you. See if you kind of understand what it means in terms of what Shakespeare is doing here. He is painting the scenery for you. Let's go on with it again. But soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who is already sick and pale with grief, that thou, her handmaiden, is far more fair than she. What's going on? The scene starts in darkness. You're in a garden. And that's only mentioned because Romeo, excuse me. Romeo jumps over the garden wall, lands on stage, whatever that is, however you're going to do it, in a real Shakespearean stage or in a stage full of scenery on Broadway. Excuse me a second, I need the water again. I'm sorry, I'm sitting here with all this stage lighting on me and I'm getting dry. Thank you. Okay. So he answers off stage. Mercutio is making fun of him. You can hear him saying, and the first line that Romeo really has is he jests at scars that have not felt a wound, dare not felt a wound, and even that's in iambics. He jests at scars that dare not felt a wound. Must be have not. He jests at scars that have not felt a wound. And then he turns and he sees a light. Well, a door opens supposedly, and Juliet comes out on what most people think is a balcony. Actually, in Shakespeare, it just says Juliet enters above. And you saw the way the stage was built. It was probably that area above, or it could have been off to the side by the audience on the first tier, but she's above him. And it stops him in his tracks as he's walking through the garden, as he's picking his way. And an actor would pick his way because it's supposed to be dark. Don't forget, it's like 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon on the south bank of the Thames. But what Shakespeare is doing is setting up the scene. He's talking about suns and moons. He will be talking about stars and stuff in a minute. But he's telling the audience that we are in the middle of the night. It's after the party, which was the previous scene, where he meets Juliet. He doesn't know she's a Capulet yet. Oh, yes, she does. Yes, he does. Yes, he does. He finds that out at the end. I've seen previous. Sorry. Anyway, but soft is what stops him in his tracks. It means like, shh. What is that light over there? You know? But soft. But soft. What light through yonder window breaks? Then he walks a little bit more and he sees her as she comes out. And he goes, and he starts immediately to compare her to the sun. Even though we're in the middle of the night, the sun overshadows the moon, always, right? It's brighter. It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Suns rise in the east, even in Shakespeare's day. Then he says more. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who is already sick and pale with grief, that thou, her maid, is far more fair than she. He's feminizing the moon, but he's telling the sun to rise and kill the moon, who is envious of Juliet's beauty. That's all it is. If you listen to Shakespeare's verse, it tells you so much. And don't let the poetry bother you. It shouldn't. One of the other tricks about acting Shakespeare, which an old teacher of mine told me a long time ago, and the only time I've ever played Shakespeare was once in high school, college. I was a lord in Macbeth, and again off Broadway, some little theater on West 32nd Street or something. I played Polonius in Hamlet, Ophelia's father. I had a lot of scenes, and I did it on purpose. I needed a Shakespearean role to put on my resume, you know, to say I played Polonius. So, let's go back to Romeo and Juliet a little bit here now. So that's what the teacher was telling us. You don't play the ends of the verses. You know, the end of the verse, the end of the line. You don't play that. You play the punctuation. You know, arise fair moon and kill the envious, arise fair sun and kill the envious moon, who is pale with grief that thou her, you know, whatever. You run it together. So, play the punctuation if you ever get a chance to do Shakespeare. Same if you're reading it. If you're going to be taking an English class where you probably will read a play by Shakespeare, hopefully it'll be Hamlet or Romeo and Juliet. The comedies are a little bit too not complicated, but yeah, they're harder to follow. They're brilliant. They're great. But right off the bat, if you've never done Shakespeare, I wouldn't make you read, All's Well That Ends Well or something. Hamlet's a little accessible, so's Romeo and Juliet. They're the two plays that everybody in the world knows. If they've never read it, they know sort of what it's about. They may have seen a film version of it. One of them, right? In fact, I recommend you to do that on your own sometime. 1968, Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet. I used to show it in class. It's a brilliant movie. Very colorful and very youthful, and it's charming. So, going to another thing. True artists will often fool around with these rules. And I'm only talking about the verses, because Shakespeare and later you'll see Ben Jonson, if you ever read one of his plays. A lot of Shakespeare is in prose as well. Prose is what you and I speak all the time. Prose is letter writing. Regular, it's not poetry. He's poetic in the prose. What a piece of work is man, how noble in reason, how divine in whatever. It's a beautiful speech, but it's written in prose dialogue. So, but in the versifying, you play around with it. Mozart would give you later on would give you a line of music that flies up, and then maybe he'll do it backwards in the next way, or play around with the melody, etc. So sometimes not everything fits this nice little rule of iambic pentameter. If "But's off with light through yonder window breaks" is probably the most famous line in Romeo and Juliet. The most famous line in all of Shakespeare, arguably, is from Hamlet. To be or not to be, that is the question. That's the line. Hamlet is talking about committing suicide. He is. He's contemplating ending it. And the speech is about that the only reason to keep everybody from committing suicide is the fear of what is after death. That's what that whole to die, to sleep, to dream no more, etc. is the rest of the speech. To be alive. To be. Or not to be. That is, or that is, the question. A chun is hanging out there by itself. Here's your five I ams, and what do you do with this? Shun. It doesn't even go to the next line. Oh, and speaking of that, characters can share the five I ams. you'll see that written on the page sometimes, where somebody, I don't have the examples with me right now, but it might be badam badam badam, and then another character will say badam badam, badam 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 badam. So it can be used between, and on a page it'll be separated to keep the line all one. How's that? Anyway, what do you do with the shun? Nothing. You just play with it. It's there. To be or not to be, that is the question. Or you could stress that if you want. That is the question. That is the question. That is the question. And use the as sort of a pickup. But I don't think it's that. That is the emphasis in the line. I think it is. That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take up arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing, end them. What's nobler? To suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune? To just sit and suffer your pain and everything else that's going on in your life? Is that nobler? Who knows? Or to take up arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing, end them. Is it noble to kill yourself? This is what that whole soliloquy is about. That's another not invention of Shakespeare, but Shakespeare really did perfect this soliloquy. A soliloquy is the character on stage alone, verbalizing his or her thoughts. He doesn't have to necessarily even be alone. It could be a whole stage full of people, but he walks over there, looks out at the audience, and talks directly to them. Now, that's a directorial thing. This is where representational and presentational performance develops. Representational is talking to other people like this. Let's stick with the soliloquy. Hamlet could walk on stage, for instance, and he could sit down and he could just start thinking to himself and never look at anybody. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. You see, he's talking to himself. Or he can walk out on stage, engage the audience with his glance, and actually say, to be or not to be, that is the question. That second one is called presentational. He's presenting himself. The representational is representing the life, representing life as it's lived. So he's in the world of the play. He doesn't break what later we will discover is called the fourth wall. Okay, that's a term coming with realism and all of that. No. Even proscenium marches, people did break the fourth wall a lot. But we'll talk about that in a few more weeks. But anyway, so soliloquizing is a Shakespearean, I almost said invention, and I just said he didn't invent it. He didn't invent it, because Faust soliloquizes. All of the other characters in all the other plays soliloquize. But that's what soliloquies are. But so for yonder window breaks, it is the east, and Juliet is the sun, etc., etc., etc. It's like 30 lines, and it is a soliloquy. Now he overhears Juliet, but Juliet has a short soliloquy when she's on that balcony, and she goes, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Deny thy father and... No. Deny thy father and... I think it's deny thy name. I should have books with me, but I don't read out of the books. Or forswear thy love, and I no longer will be a Capulet, whatever it is. There's another playing around, okay? This, her line, most books show it as Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? And it's still five, uh, it's reversed iambs, I think, but there's still five in the line. So it's hard, soft, hard, soft, hard, soft. Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Wherefore doesn't mean where, it means why, by the way. Wherefore, right? It's like saying therefore. Therefore doesn't mean there, it means thus. Also, that kind of thing. Ergo, wherefore. Therefore. But wherefore is an old way of saying why. So, but she's got it that. Now, some scripts, it depends upon which edition you have, because a lot of this was put together later after Shakespeare died, when his plays were first published, from small roles. Your part. When you were a Shakespearean actor, or an actor of Elizabethan era, right? Printing, yeah, we talked about the printing press in the lecture and all of that, but no. That was too expensive. A scribe would write out your part. You're playing Juliet, you're going to get only Juliet's papers, only the part of Juliet. It might have a line, and in rehearsal you'll know who speaks to you, etc., etc. But you're not going to get a full script. Like if we were doing Romeo and Juliet today, everybody would run out and buy a copy of Romeo and Juliet and have the whole play in their hands. But no. And many times they were written as, well, in the ancient days, they were written as rolled up parts. That's why we call it a role. Here's your role. What role do you have? I have the role of Romeo, or the part of Romeo. I got a part in a play. That's where we get those words from. So some editions will have, they stick an O in front of that first Romeo. O Romeo. No, but see, it doesn't work. O Romeo, Romeo, wherefore? Because it's not wherefore art thou Romeo. It has to be wherefore art thou. Why are you Romeo? Right? So it's rather interesting. I know I have a lot more to tell you about how to do this, but I'm not teaching an acting class to you right now. I just want you to be aware of the language, of the stressing. Yeah. In the written thing, 5 people you really need to know about. Okay? 4 people. Yeah, in English Renaissance. Kit Marlowe. Christopher Marlowe. His nickname was Kit, they called him to his face. Like my name is Charles, but most people call me Skip. Kit Marlowe, William Shakespeare, Ben Jonson, and Inigo Jones. Don't leave out Inigo Jones. He's very important to the development of this period. Historically, Elizabeth and James. Elizabeth was cousins to Mary Queen of Scots. Mary Queen of Scots was beheaded by Elizabeth. I mean, she didn't take the sword, but she had trumped up. She was a queen, a Catholic queen in Scotland, above Protestant England. Elizabeth was one of the daughters of Henry VIII. I didn't have the time or the wherewithal to give you that history lesson about the Tudors, but you should look them up. Interesting bunch of people. Trumped up charges of treason against old Mary Queen of Scots, and therefore Mary Queen of Scots got beheaded. But it was her son, who was James VI of Scotland. After Elizabeth died, Parliament asked, as the next of kin, even though his last name was Stuart, to take over the throne of England. But Parliament made him promise not to pursue or turn England back into being a Catholic country. This was Reformation times. Even Elizabeth, even though the religion was Protestant, Anglicanism what we in America call the Episcopalians. It's the Anglican Rite, which is what was created by Henry VIII. And to this day, the monarch, the ruling monarch of England, is the head of the Church of England, because there's no pope involved anymore in English thing. But if you look at the ritual, if you look at the church, if you go to an Episcopalian church and watch a service, it's very much like, very familiar to Roman Catholics. I've had arguments about that, but when I say that to Episcopalians. But anyway, yeah, he had to promise not to do that. So there was more of a religious freedom in Elizabethan and Jacobean England. Jacobean Jacob is sort of a Latinized version of James, which is why the Jamestown, when it was founded here in the United States, in North America, Jamestown, the colony, was named after James. Virginia was named after Elizabeth because she was considered the Virgin Queen. She never married. She didn't have any children. Didn't mean she didn't sleep around. She had a right reputation, but she had no children and she wasn't married. Because in England, even though women can rule, she was very worried about having a king. Later, the person married to the Queen, and I think it came in with Victoria, he's called the Prince Consort. Philip over there in England right now, married to the present Queen, Elizabeth II, is called Prince Philip, and he's the Prince Consort, meaning he consorts with the Queen. But they don't use the word king, because king overshadows a queen. So, Elizabeth stayed single, died childless, so there was no heir to the throne, and the Tudor dynasty ended. So, all right, I did throw in a little history there, didn't I? All right, so that's it for now. Next time, we're going to try to talk about, I think I'll send you 2 videos, one about the Spanish Renaissance, one about the French Renaissance, but that's next week. Right now, that's this. And I think you understand why I needed to speak to you about how to do the Shakespeare stuff. All right? So enjoy the thing, watch all the YouTubes, do what you normally do all week. I will be sending you the attachments with the study lists for the Italian and the English Renaissance, so on Saturday, which is tomorrow. I do these things on Friday night so I can upload them and get them to you Saturday. And therefore, read all that, study nicely all this week. All right? So Monday, I think, is a holiday for you, isn't it? Yes, it is. Yes, it's Columbus Day. 1492. So, yes, no Columbus Day parade this year. God, that's the other thing. So much bad is happening in terms of... Just stay healthy, everybody. And I'll see you in a week. Bye. And as usual, if you have any questions, just write to me. Ciao.